All right, welcome back here to the Jordy Collada Show, daily presented by Go Chevrolet. Remember, stop in and check out Lee Carney and our friend Nick Richard down there as they were up and moving vehicles. If you want brand new Chevys or if you're looking for pre-owned and certified cars, check in with Go Chevrolet this morning. GEAUXChevrolet.com. Our LSU basketball and baseball scheduled for games tonight, both in Baton Rouge over at the Maravich Center. The Commodores are in town as Vanderbilt is in to take on LSU. We mentioned how big these games have become for LSU basketball, and LSU baseball off to a really nice 7-game start, 6-1 on the season. And good news, it seems like, around Cody, as Coach Paul Maneri updated yesterday. No structural damage on the shoulder, and Nolan Kane said yesterday that the medical staff was on Doty, and hopefully he can be back here pretty quickly into a lineup that's busting the ball right now. Cody Worsham's over at LSU. He's with LSU Digital. We lean on him for a lot of the LSU inside news as he's connected as good as anybody over there. Make sure and check out Cody as he's got a lot of cool stuff happening. He is in the podcast game, has been in the podcast game for a while now. And you can all check out his work at LSU Sports, lsusports.net, where he has the host of Tigers Win, Boot Up, and Hey Fightin' Tiger podcast. Good morning, Cody. How are you?
What's up, y'all? I'm good. How are y'all?
Good, man. We referenced a stat that you put out over the weekend about the frontline pitching that LSU featured and just how dominant those three guys were. What did you make of LSU baseball and their performance in the 3 games over at the box?
Yeah, they look great this weekend. I went out there Friday and really enjoyed what I saw from the team. And, with the starting pitching, look, the competition's going to get better. They're going to face better bats. But what you like is that they're not walking a bunch of guys. They're throwing a lot of strikes. And so that's the first thing that you look for against some of these teams. The other thing is, for me, it's Jaden Hill and his ability to extend and how efficient he's been. Now, I went out there a couple times this fall, and he wasn't very efficient. He walked some guys, hit some guys. I wouldn't say struggled with control necessarily, but just in moments he wasn't able to get himself quickly in and out of innings. That hadn't been a problem so far this year. In fact, it's never been a problem when the lights have been on. When the lights are on, he goes to a different level. And you combine that kind of competitive ability, which has been a trademark of his in every sport that he's played. If you go back to probably when he was playing Pee Wee football, it's a dangerous combination. And to me, that was the biggest question mark. Can Jaden be that Friday night guy that gives you 6, 7, 8 innings every Friday? And so far, all the signs point that way. And then the other question, I wasn't necessarily worried about the bats for LSU because I thought there was some ability there. It was more who was going to emerge of the potential bats. What I didn't expect is so far, basically everyone is rising to the challenge and trying to stake their claim. Drew Bianco being a great example. He didn't play much the first few games. He comes in on Saturday and hits 2 bombs. Now he leads the team in OPS. So how do you find a spot for him to keep working? Brody Dross is another great example. He's probably the 5th or 6th outfielder when you put them down on paper, and now he's raking. And so what do? You got to find a spot for him. So a lot of guys that are, forcing their way into the conversation and kind of demanding that Paul Maneri give them playing time, which is great. That's what you want at this part of the year. You want a ton of competition. You want a bunch of guys who make the life hard on the coach by making his decisions hard. It's a good problem to have. So I'm excited about this team so far. Interested to see when they kind of step up to the next level of competition, but they look really, really good so far.
Yeah, Drost hit 500 last week, including his first collegiate home run last Wednesday night in Lafayette as he blasted a 2-run shot. Tonight, Javen Coleman will get the start, and this is another one that this is another guy that's interesting because last week he comes out, dominates Louisiana Tech. Big, tall lefty, can move it. Hunt was here last week, said he envisions Coleman at some point to become a weekend starter during his time at LSU. But Coleman represents a great example of what I'm talking about. It just seems like they keep running these guys out there. I mean, after Hill, Marceau, Labus, I mean, those guys are front line and they can be dominant, but it looks like they've got a really deep staff.
Yeah, that's the advantage of getting some of those guys back that, for this season, especially a guy like Labus, who might have gone after last year if he had a really good year. Coleman looked great in his first outing. He kind of embodied one of the things that I like about this team. He's got some swagger to him. He's got some juice about him. I joked on Twitter that I was going to start calling him Juice because I like the way that he kind of carried himself. And one of his former coaches replied and said, "We don't call him Juice, we call him All Day," which I like that response because that tells me, all right, this is a guy that they can count on all day, and he can be a starting pitcher for you, which, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but you do kind of start looking ahead at next year. Okay, if you lose Marceau and Hill and Labus, like who are those next guys in line? And he would be one of the favorites right now with the way that he threw in that first game. And I know it's a small sample size, but I'm kind of like Hunt. You can see. I mean, you can see when you watch a guy if he's got it or not, and Coleman does. I think Edwards does too. I went out there for a scrimmage, and he actually gave up 2 homers in the scrimmage. I think he faced probably 8 batters. Gave up 2 homers, and the other 6 he just dominated. And so it was almost like, yeah, I know he gave up 2 homers in a couple innings, but you could just kind of see the stuff, the composure, the control. He made good pitches. Guys just hit him out. That's going to happen sometimes. He didn't seem rattled in those moments. That's kind of what Paul Mainieri has pointed to with Edwards. I'm sure y'all are aware of this because I think they talked about it on the broadcast, but he scored over 4,000 points in his basketball career in high school. And so they've got a lot of those guys. They've got competitors. They've got athletes. They've got multi-sport athletes, which brings a different element of, mentality, a different kind of resilience and swagger, like I said. And so that's what I like about this team. When Dugas hit his grand slam earlier this year, and he kind of looked back at the bench and was screaming and flexing his muscles. I saw a few people say, "Oh, act like you've been there before. You gotta, don't show up the other team." And normally I kind of lean that way a little bit. I agree with those kinds of sentiments usually, but I think this team and this program needs to express some of that. Show some swagger, show some juice, and they've done that so far. That's good.
Speaking of swagger, Dylan Cruz, 2 home runs last week for the stellar freshman. You got 2 more years of this cat on campus, and he looks like a big leaguer. What have you made of the 5-star recruit?
Oh man, he's special in a number of ways. First, he's all business, which I love. We've had guys come through here before that were just studs, and you could tell from day one. And Bregman's a good example, and I think Bregman was beloved as a Tiger. Bregman was all business too, but Bregman also had a little bit of, I don't know, what you call it, arrogance, or he had that kind of that edge to him. Cruz doesn't really give that off. It's more just like, look, I'm here to work and get to work and do my job. And, he's not really going to point to himself much. He's not really, thinking about building his brand or anything like that. Like we did this event with some student athletes a few weeks back where we kind of sat them down and asked them about NIL and what their expectations were and what they wanted to get out of it. And he just kind of sat there the whole time, was like, yeah, I'm here to play baseball. Like, I'm not really worried about any of that stuff. I mean, he's just all business. And then you take that mentality and then you put it on a guy that, I know this analogy has been made before, and so I'm not breaking ground here, but he looks like Mike Trout out there. Like, physically, he looks bigger and more physically advanced than everybody. Go look at some of the pictures from this weekend. Yeah. The dude's got like tree trunks for legs. I mean, he looks like he's got football player legs. Like, and so he's got strength, he's got speed. He's making. He's got 16 balls over 100 miles per hour off his bat so far. The next closest to the team is 6. I mean, he's doing everything and just keeps his head down, gets back to work, and and plays baseball. So I love everything about him. I know at some point it'll tail off and he'll go through a little slump or whatever, but I think he's built to bounce back from that, because I think he's got a great baseball approach and mentality, and it's very, very evident.
Speaking of football players, it looks like they've got some questions at center field, or they've got some competition that can open up with Giovanni missing some time with some hamstring. Do you hear anything on Mo Hampton on where he might fit in on the baseball field? I know he's got a break off for spring football coming over here in a couple of weeks, but does he fit in at all?
Yeah, it's tough, when there's all that depth there. I mentioned Dross, the Giacomo, they like Safford in the outfield some. Mitchell Sanford has played well when called upon. I think there's a role for him on this team, and I think that he will get an opportunity, because I think everyone on this team will get an opportunity. The spring football element to me is the biggest question mark, and can he handle that and get back with the team after spring football and still make an impact? I think hopefully over the next couple of weeks we get to see a little more of him. You got a little bit of action there at Nichols. It's just tough for these football guys that really, really go into football season kind of like he did, and then you get back to baseball and you're 2 months behind everybody, 3 months behind everybody. So he's probably still playing a little catch up. But I keep referencing the scrimmage I went out to. The scrimmage I went out to, he hit a bomb. He hit a home run, and you see the raw ability and the raw talent. And he's a first round pick type of grade coming out of high school. If I remember correctly, he did get picked in the first round.
Yeah.
So he's got the talent. It's just, he probably needs to get the reps and catch up and get the opportunity. And if he can get there, I think he can make an impact on the team. I think he's the type of guy, the analogy that I would make is almost like Mikey Matuk it's not like for like, but a guy that could come on later in the season and take your lineup and your talent to the next level. I mean, an outfield with like him, Cruz, and DeGiacomo, I mean, that's as fast and athletic of an outfield as you're going to get, and with some power in the corners. If Mo was out in left field, so I like the ceiling he provides to this team. I think he just needs to get reps and get work done.
Cody Worsham joining us here on the Jordy Culotta Show. You can find Cody Worsham on Twitter. He's the LSU digital media reporter. He's a podcaster over there. LSU basketball, as we said, a huge one tonight. They're all big at this point. What did you make of their performance in Fayetteville? And give me a little preview of how you see them tonight versus the Commodores.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of par for the course for this team. Like you don't know which team you're going to get on any given night. The thing that I kind of hang my hat on with this team is that when they're playing well and clicking and their energy is up and their mentality is in the right place, they are as talented and especially with that first 5 or 6 or 7 guys, as talented and capable as any team in the country. It's just the consistency that's missing, and we'll probably catch up to them. I remember when our season ends, it's going to end against this type of team. And Michigan State ended up being a pretty good model for that team. Although that was a really good Michigan State team. This year's team is kind of the same. Like when their season ends, it's going to end the way that these last couple of games have gone. They're going to struggle shooting from the three. Darius Days is going to have an off night offensively, and defensively they're just not going to make up for it with stops. And so that's the ceiling over their head right now that's holding them back. I think by this point in the season they are who they are, and you're not going to expect that to change. But what you can hope for is that they get back to being the good version of themselves, and then maintain that over a longer stretch of time against the right kind of opponent. It's all, at this point in the season, you're if they take care of business these last 2 games, beat Vanderbilt, win a game at the SEC tournament, they're probably pretty comfortably in the tournament, although I haven't looked at the projections, but it feels like their resume is good enough to get them in. And then once you're in, it's matchups and then how you play. And I wouldn't want to play LSU in March just because defensively game planning for them is not fun. But at the same time, like offensively, you feel pretty good going against them, so you could probably find some things to work with. But I'd just rather play a team with a lower ceiling than this LSU team. So, but yeah, they've got to right the ship, and Will's really good at that. He's really good at identifying weaknesses, figuring out solutions for them. Eventually, when you have the deficiencies that this team has, the other team, eventually the opponent will figure out how to counter it. But he's really good at countering that. So I trust that he'll have good game plans going into these last few games and get these guys a little more confident, a little higher energy for the home stretch, and hopefully they can have a good and exciting March. I'm not expecting this team to be a Final Four team. They've got very, very high ceiling though, and I think they can be very, very dangerous in March. And it'd be fun to see them kind of make a run here.
Cody, what is their capability of being like when they're playing their best? What is their seed?
Oh, I mean, when they're playing their best, they could be a 4 seed, really. I mean, they could be a top 20 team in the country to me when they're playing their best. I mean, just look at their offensive efficiency numbers. They're a top, last I checked, 6 or 7 offense in the country in terms of offensive efficiency. They can score. There aren't many teams that can go out there and just walk in the gym and get 90, and this team can. So, if you walk in a gym and you get 90, you can play bad defense and still win. You could still give up 88 and win the game. And that's what this team can do. Now, problem is you can't get 90 every night. There's going to be nights where Darius Days, like he did against Arkansas, goes 0 for 7 from 3. It's just part of the game, part of the percentages. And so you've got to be able to have a backup plan that works for you. This team just hasn't really been able to have that backup plan consistently. There's been games where there's zones and presses, and their matchup has given teams has complicated things for teams. But there's been games where they couldn't stop anybody. So at their best, they're a 4. I mean, realistically, they're probably a 10 right now. But the 10 line is a good spot for them, in my opinion. It gets you away from the potential matchup with a 1 in the round of 32. I think they can beat a 7. So if you're in a 7-10 game, I think they can win that game, and then you get the right 2, and you're in the Sweet 16. That's kind of the path that I see for this team. I would prefer, I know they want to win all their games, and Will wants them to win all their games and all that stuff. I would prefer they stay off the 8-9 line, which it sounds like they're away from. But that 10 or even, well, I guess 11 wouldn't really work. But that 10 spot would be a great, great number for them.
Cody Worsham joining us here. One thing that we don't regularly talk about, we don't talk about it at all, and we should, is LSU softball, Beth Torina. And I wanted to highlight a couple of student athletes that you guys have over there at LSU, including Bo Brunet, who is a photographer in the class of 2023, who caught an image over the weekend at Softball Park or at Tiger Park with Aaliyah Andrews, who's A.J. Andrews' younger sister, who was an All-American softball player here, I believe, in 2015. But Aaliyah Andrews, who is just full out dive. I mean, she is
full extension,
stretched out, full extension, feet probably 2 feet off the ground. Her gloves probably about 8 feet, 9 feet off the ground. Full extension with the softball in the middle of the glove. It's an incredible shot by Bo Brunet, who actually was recognized by NCAA softball as the picture of the week.
Right.
But just what Beth Torina has going on, and come to find out, this is pretty regular from Aaliyah, her making these types of plays.
Yeah, I couldn't keep up with them over the last couple of weeks. She just keeps making them. I'm hoping to do something with her and Trey Morgan at some point where we kind of sit down with both of them and go through some of their highlights and talk about defense. Because it's not something you see much, right? Like, you see defensive highlights all the time on SportsCenter and stuff, but you don't see it consistently from one person in college softball over and over again. And she keeps doing it. And they're not cheap. Like, you've seen, especially like at youth baseball level, but even in high school and college, guys take friendly routes to the ball, set themselves up for the diving catch, and kind of make the flashier play. There ain't none of that going on with Aaliyah Andrews. It is sprint to the spot, lay out, full extension, make the play, and she's probably the only player in the country that can make the play. It's remarkable. And the photo from Bo was just perfect. I remember watching the video and be like, man, because this is kind of how my brain works since I work here now. I was like, man, I hope we got that on a good photo of that. And then the photo was better than I could imagine. But you mentioned Coach Tarina, and not to overplug here, but I had her on Tigers Win last week. It'll probably come out next week. And for those who don't know, Tigers Win is kind of where I sit down with coaches and players and alumni, and I sort of pick their brains and try to steal some ideas from them on what they do to be successful, how they go about their day, their routines, their toolkits, whatever. Beth Tarina is the best in terms of building culture that I've ever been around from a coaching perspective. I grew up with two coaches. I grew up my whole life around coaches, played for a million of them, youth league, high school, and college. Beth Tarina is the best at building and establishing a culture within her program. The language they use, the imagery they use, the buy-in she gets from her players, the way that they're all on the same page, her approach to coaching, to the game, she's unbelievable. It was, I probably sat down for 35 minutes. It was as productive a 35-minute conversation as I've ever had with a coach, because she laid out everything, how she, if you're like a CEO or a manager or starting a company or trying to progress in your career, like it's perfect to learn how to use language and use team building tools to get buy-in from all the people around you. She's unbelievable. She deserves a national championship. I think she'll get there. It's really, really hard because there's only one can win it, right? Not to state the obvious, but she's exceptional, and this team has a chance to be special. I know they've been up and down. That's kind of the nature of softball when you run these teams that have a dominant pitcher. You're going to win some close games. You're going to lose some close games, and they've played a tough schedule. But this team's really good. Aaliyah's been fantastic. They've got some great pitching. Shelby Sunseri is a great two-way player, probably as good as any in the country. Really good team, really good program, and Beth is just absolutely the best.
Yeah, she is, and she's done such a great job of. I know you mentioned their play has been a little inconsistent, but the program just is always consistent in the way that it executes and performs, and the way that it represents not only the school but our state. Last one, Cody, I'll get you out of here. We love to talk basketball back and forth. You're a hoop head. Do you know what you're looking at in Zion Williamson right now and what he's becoming in the NBA? I mean, it seems like within 6 feet of the bucket, he is as automatic as we've ever seen in that league, and he continues to get better. I know that you love the game, and Zion's kind of budding in front of our eyes. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I've never seen anything like him. I watch him a lot of Duke because I'm a closeted Duke fan, and so I watched a bunch of him at that level, and still didn't see him becoming what he is at this level. I thought when they drafted him, I was like, oh, he's going to be a small ball five, and that's the future of the league. He's going to be you're going to put four shooters around him, and he'll be kind of the Draymond Green small ball five man. And he's actually not. He's the point guard. That's his best role is as the facilitator coming down court. So that skill set is unique, but it's his ability to be more explosive than literally every player he goes against with the strength that he has. It's just a combination I've never seen before. He can literally get to the rim whenever he wants to. You can put bodies on him. He's going to get through those bodies without fouling and finish above the rim. Like him and Giannis going at each other the other day was, my brain almost couldn't process it, because Giannis, like, you can't stop Giannis, right? And Giannis can stop whoever he wants to. And watching Giannis just have no answer for Zion defensively, I've never seen anything like it. I could not believe that Giannis was looking at Zion and saying, whatever I do doesn't work. He gets over me, he gets around me, he gets by me. Zion's got a chance to be I'm not gonna. He's got a chance to be one of the best to ever do it. Defensively is where he's got to really take his next steps. That's the difference between him and AD. When AD came in, he was an instant impact defensively. Zion's still figuring it out there, but offensively, he is miles ahead of probably any young player that I can think of. Period. And honestly, Jordy, I know I'm rambling here. I think he is the most unique and must-watch TV NBA player since Steph started breaking out and doing his thing from three. Because we'd never seen that before. What Steph was doing, you've never seen before what Zion's doing around the paint, around the rim, the efficiency, the explosiveness. Today's NBA has become space, pace, threes.
Yep.
It's a lot of the same cut and pace. Zion is the exception to that rule. He is unlike anything in the league and so fun to watch. And glad he's in New Orleans. That's all I got to say. Glad he's in New Orleans.
Bully ball in the NBA. I mean, it is school ball in the NBA where you just hand it to your biggest, strongest, fastest and say, go get us a bucket. Except this is against the world's elite. And they have no answer for him within 5-6 feet of the ball. I mean, last night he had Gobert, the defensive player of the year in the NBA, isolated on the wing. And Gobert knew he was going left. He knew he was going left. And he took him straight to the rack and laid it up in his face. I mean, it's just, you can't explain it. I mean, if you're not catching on and you don't understand in our region, in our state, that there is a generational talent in basketball that there is really no comp for what he's doing and how he's playing. We always appreciate your time, man. Thank you, and we'll keep up with all the podcasts and talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank y'all.
All right, man. There's Cody Worsham checking in.